Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most iconic and towering figures in basketball history, had just wrapped up a grueling day of travel. Exhausted, he decided to pull over at a small diner nestled in a quiet rural town, hoping for a moment of peace and solitude. Craving anonymity, he dressed casually, a simple hoodie and jeans. But even seated, his immense stature made him hard to overlook. Still, Shaq managed to find refuge in a secluded corner booth, away from prying eyes. The diner exuded charm, with its cozy, old-school ambience. A handful of locals filled the space, chatting softly as they enjoyed their meals. The waitress, a warm woman in her 50s with a welcoming smile, greeted everyone cheerfully. For once, Shaq hoped this would be a rare escape from the constant attention that followed him everywhere. He ordered a burger and fries, settling into his seat, ready to savor some much-needed tranquility. But fate had other plans. Just as his food arrived, the calm was shattered by the entrance of a rowdy group of young men in their 20s. Clad in mismatched clothes and oozing arrogance, they swaggered in like they owned the place. Their loud voices and crude language quickly filled the room, turning heads and souring moods. The leader of the pack, Tony, a scruffy bearded man with a cocky demeanor, began spewing racist remarks about the diner staff, mocking accents and hurling slurs that cut through the air like daggers. Shaq, ever disciplined, tried to stay out of it. He focused on his meal, pretending not to hear the venomous words echoing around him. Yet the tension grew palpable. Other patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding eye contact, while the waitress nervously glanced between the gang and Shaq, unsure how to defuse the situation. Despite his years of experience navigating public spaces without causing trouble, Shaq couldn't ignore what was happening. The gang eventually noticed the giant sitting quietly in the corner. Unaware of his identity, they assumed he was an easy target. "Hey, big guy," Tony called out mockingly. "What's wrong? Too scared to talk? Or are you just slow?" Shaq remained silent, hoping his indifference would discourage them. But Tony wasn't satisfied. He leaned closer, smirking, throwing more insults. Still, Shaq didn't flinch. His calm demeanor masked the storm brewing beneath the surface. Emboldened by his lack of response, the gang escalated. One member grabbed a fistful of fries from Shaq's plate and hurled them at him, hitting him squarely in the face. The diner fell deathly silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward Shaq, who calmly wiped the food away, though his narrowed gaze signaled a shift in the atmosphere. Emboldened by their perceived victory, the gang laughed louder, egging each other on. Another threw a piece of bread, striking Shaq in the chest. That was the final straw. Rising slowly to his full height, Shaq loomed over the group. Though momentarily stunned, the gang dismissed him as nothing more than a gentle giant. What they failed to realize was that Shaquille O'Neal wasn't just a retired basketball legend. He was also a highly trained martial artist, skilled in karate and combat techniques after years of rigorous training. As the tension reached its breaking point, the waitress bravely stepped forward. Her voice trembled, but carried conviction. "Please," she pleaded, addressing the gang. "Leave him alone. Let him eat in peace." Tony sneered at her intervention, mocking her role as a mere server. Encouraged by his reaction, others joined in, hurling insults and threats, even attempting to intimidate her physically. It was then that Shaq intervened. Standing tall, his commanding presence dominated the room. With unwavering authority, he addressed the group. "Leave her alone," he said, his tone firm yet composed. "She's just doing her job. You don't need to treat her like this." Their laughter only fueled their misplaced confidence. "What's he gonna do?" Tony taunted, stepping closer, fists clenched. "Throw a punch." The rest of the gang cheered him on, egging him to make the first move. Tony lunged forward, aiming a punch at Shaq's chest, convinced that sheer bravado would win the day. They were about to learn exactly why underestimating Shaquille O'Neal was the worst mistake they could ever make. Convinced that Shaq wouldn't be able to handle them, Tony lunged forward with a burst of misplaced confidence. But in an instant, everything seemed to slow down as if time itself had paused to witness what happened next. Shaq's reflexes were electrifying, lightning fast and precise. With just a fraction of an inch sidestep to the left, he intercepted Tony mid-swing, grabbing his wrist as though Tony hadn't moved at all. Before the gang could even process it, Shaq twisted Tony's arm effortlessly, using both his immense size and impeccable skill to pin him into submission. The pain froze Tony solid. "Not today," Shaq said calmly, his voice steady like steel. The rest of the gang stood stunned, their overconfidence crumbling before their eyes. They hesitated, unsure how to react, but Shaq didn't give them a moment to recover. Drawing on his quick reflexes and years of disciplined karate training, he turned toward the remaining members, ready to act. A second man charged at him, thinking he'd catch Shaq off guard. Instead, Shaq blocked him with a swift, calculated move, sending the attacker stumbling backward like a leaf caught in the wind. Another swung wildly at Shaq's face, but Shaq ducked under the punch and smoothly twisted the man's arm behind his back with practiced ease. Not a bead of sweat broke from his brow. Every movement was fluid, deliberate, and powerful. When the final gang member tried to make a run for it, Shaq stepped forward without hesitation, blocking the exit with one massive hand. "Not so fast," he said firmly, his tone calm yet unyielding. "You all owe this woman an apology." Realization dawned on the gang. They had underestimated Shaq in every possible way. Humiliation washed over them as they realized there was no escape. One by one, they reluctantly turned to the waitress, who stood behind the counter watching the scene unfold in disbelief. Each muttered an awkward apology, their voices heavy with shame. Only after ensuring the apologies were sincere did Shaq step aside, allowing the gang to slink out of the diner, heads hung low, mumbling under their breath. As the door closed behind them, the room exhaled collectively. What had once been tense and hostile now radiated relief. Everyone present knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, not just the sheer physical dominance of Shaq, but the quiet power of standing up for justice. Shaq turned back to the waitress, offering her a warm, reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said softly. "They won't bother you again." With that, he headed toward the door, leaving the diner silent but buzzing with admiration. It wasn't just about stopping a fight. It was about championing kindness and respect over cruelty. As the humiliated gang lingered outside, realizing too late they had picked the wrong person across, Shaq made sure they understood the weight of their actions. "You're going to apologize," he reiterated, his commanding voice brooking no argument. Slowly, still reeling from the demonstration of Shaq's strength and precision, the gang complied. Their apologies came haltingly, tinged with embarrassment, but genuine nonetheless. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. The tension evaporated, replaced by gratitude and awe. The waitress, visibly shaken but resolute, accepted their words but wasted no time calling the police. Within moments, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder until officers arrived to take control of the situation. The gang was swiftly escorted out, their menacing presence erased from the diner entirely. Calm returned, and the staff gathered around Shaq, thanking him profusely. "Thank you so much for stepping in," the waitress said, her voice trembling with relief. Other customers echoed her sentiments, expressing their deep appreciation for how Shaq had not only protected them, but also upheld what was right. Some patrons, recognizing the legendary figure now that the chaos had settled, eagerly approached for photos and autographs. Ever gracious, Shaq obliged, taking the time to make each person feel valued. In that small diner, amidst ordinary people, Shaq proved that true strength isn't just about physical prowess. It's about courage, compassion, and standing firm when it matters most. Before departing, Shaq paused at the doorway and turned back to address the room. "Let it be known," he said, his voice resonating with authority, "that no one should ever endure bullying or racism. Stand together, support one another. That's how we create change and build a better world." With those parting words, he stepped out, leaving the atmosphere of the diner uplifted and more hopeful than when he had first arrived.